Hey everyone, Jim Phoenix here, and boy, am I excited for this next author interview. We've got none other than the cosmic horror maestro himself, Bert S. Lechner. That's right, you can go to his website right now, Bert Writes Horror, BERTWRITESHORROR.com, and check out the introduction to the coming soon ebook format of The Roots Grow into the Earth. Available on pre-order on Amazon. And in fact, we might be giving a copy away ourselves. So hit us up. All this and more on the next What's Kraken. Hit it. Hey everyone, Jim Phoenix here, and boy, am I excited for this next What's Kraken. We have our third in our author series. Wow, our author series is freaking good. And we have got none other than Bert S. Lechner, which is the best cosmic horror writer we found. And they got a new book coming out, The Roots Grow into the Earth, a collection of short horror stories coming out. Pre-order it now, October 7th, 2023, ebook and print, and all sorts of madness as it goes through. Order it now. Bert, so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having anyone, because of our Cthulhu backgrounds. It's a pleasure having anyone who is into cosmic horror. And I know you probably get asked this a bazillion times, at least twice today. What got you into cosmic horror?
Uh, yeah, I think I pretty much started where I imagine a lot of people started by
Right.
reading the works of Lovecraft,
Lovecraft.
getting introduced to things like John Carpenter's The Thing and In the Mouth of Madness, experiencing Eldritch in like Dungeons and Dragons, all those
Oh.
sort of things.
See, I think you hit it on the head, especially like Lovecraft is like the gateway drug for a lot of us for the cosmic horror. And then for those of you who are listening in 2023, we didn't have all those Lovecraft like movies and TV shows and stuff like that growing up. That's new. That's like the 2020 is ish, like the last couple of years. So we had The Thing, like poor us. We had The Thing, like one of the best horror movies ever made. But so we had that, and we had Dungeons and Dragons. I'm so glad you brought up Dungeons and Dragons because that was one of the few places that you can create it in your mind. And they had the monster manuals and the compendiums, and they had awesome artists just drawing these things out into like horrors into reality. And then, so wait, you're doing Dungeons and Dragons. So that was that during the Sally, Jesse, Raphael, everyone's a Satanist time? Or was that after that?
Uh, I wasn't around in that time period. I'm a
Just
'90s
me?
kid, so I got introduced to Dungeons and Dragons in like 2009, 2010,
Oh,
in
oh,
the
you missed
that's
all the
4.0.
fun.
Yeah, in the 4.0 era.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, there were those eldritch elements that were things that I was always drawn to. And like I have a tendency to like think of my books as like, Dungeons and Dragons is a fantasy setting with an injection of cosmic horror,
Right.
as opposed to my setting, which is like a horror setting with an injection of fantasy,
I like
basically.
that. That's great. And this is The Roots That Grow into Earth, a collection of short horror stories. How many horror stories do you have in this collection?
So it's a pretty short collection. Actually, I have a physical copy with me right here.
Ooh.
This is one of the
Oh,
proofs. So
nice.
it's a pretty short book, 150 pages,
That's pretty good,
um,
though. That's really
compressed
good.
of like 9 short stories and novelettes.
Oh, see, now I was wondering, it's like nine short stories that can kind of do it, and you kind of like push it further. So when you're creating these stories, how does the idea come to you?
So for the roots grow into the earth specifically, it just few different few different inspirations depending on the story. Some of them were just like, ooh, this is a cool title. I'm gonna write a story based off this title.
Yes.
I know that the first story in this collection and the last were inspired by that.
Really?
There were a few, I think 4 of them come from Instagram prompts that I just like those monthly horror prompt
Really?
daily posts.
Good for you. That's amazing.
Uh,
I'm glad
and then
something come.
yeah, so there was those, and then there's there were ones like my largest novel. I think the largest one, The Wall, is just based off the idea of like, what if I made a wall but it was evil? Um, so yeah, so there's those, and then uh, one of them is based off of a dream, but like just kind of inspired by that. So it's
Wow.
just in general, I get inspiration for writing from a whole bunch of different places.
No, that's really cool because I am not like you in a sense that if my titles come first, that's very scary. If anyone knows my original titles and most of my stories are all monkey songs. So I guess they're all Neil Diamond songs, to be honest. Then like the cover, all my things come from cover versions. So you actually can get the title in your hand and go, oh, I wonder if I can write something with this.
Yeah, so there's a handful. There's a handful of them. Like I just came up with the idea like their eyes were dust. That's a cool phrase. I'm
That
gonna
is a
make
cool
that a
book.
title of one of my books,
Yeah.
and so that's the first book in the series. And then going forward, I have at least one other story where the title came first, or two stories where the title came first, and then I've been working on a story behind them.
Nice. Now, without any spoilers, do you have any recurring characters?
Yeah. So the kind of the way the book is set up, I have the three novelettes in there
Right?
interspersed with shorter stories.
Oh,
In the
cool.
three novelettes,
So you
I
have
yeah.
the bridging then, right?
Do I
Are
have
the
what?
short stories bridging them?
Uh, Not really. I just I kind of I wanted to play with pacing of the stories in the books. So like I wanted
Perfect.
short book, longer novelette, few really short ones, just like kind of break up the pace a bit.
Like you would do for a paragraph. Short
Uh,
sentence, longer sentence, long,
yeah,
long, short, long, long, short, short,
yeah,
short. Yeah, okay.
pretty much that, except with like short stories. But
Oh, look at
like
you
in
with
regards to recurring characters, I do the like at least two of the novelettes are sort of have some character overlap, and they're all characters that I'm either planning on exploring in future novels or other shorter works.
that is pretty cool. Now, when you have these stories, do you see it from start to finish in your head first, or do you come out and kind of like piece them together? Like some people, I know people like will outline a story or pace out like, oh, I don't forget where are my script writing cards. Like I'll do scripts and index cards first, and then I'll flesh it out that way.
Yeah, most of the time the story's already fully developed in my head before I put it
Nice.
onto paper. Every now and again, there's a surprise that gets thrown at me or a direction I like wasn't expecting it to go. Um, but yeah, usually I've got it nailed down before I put it on paper.
I I think we're the same way with that. Like the entire story is kind of like told to you, and you're like, I must get this out now before I forget it. Da, 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 da. Did you ever forget? Not so much forget a story, but you ever try to ignore a story, or maybe more than one story came in at once?
Yeah, I do. I do have a really bad habit on working on multiple things at
Multiple.
once.
Yeah.
Like if I start to lose steam on one project, I'll jump over to another one to just like keep the writing going for the sake of writing.
That's important though. One of the hardest things, and I'm getting old, but I always think like, was this in basketball? Like, I'll never get these up, and then of course, like the first time I played basketball was like this week, and 20 years later, And writing is something you're supposed to do. It's a habit. You need to get in the habit because once you get out of the habit, it's really hard to get back into it sometimes. So I'm glad you took the approach of like spinning the plates, right? You have one project here, one project there. This one goes so far creatively, like, okay, now I unlocked my mind to do this part. And sometimes what it is, do you find that sometimes it's not so much like a writer's block or anything like that, but sometimes it helps to do another story to unlock a key to the different story?
Um, I I think sometimes I'll go like be writing a story and just get to a point where I know that I'm not ready to write this part of the story. I don't have the
Okay.
technique for this. I'm going to write another story in the meantime, and then I'll come back with new techniques for writing.
I've heard that a couple times, not just doing this author series, but I've heard that a couple times. One of the best ways I've heard for comedians who bomb on stage, one of the advice that Pete Correale, a comedian in, New York gave was, "It's not a bad joke, you're just not strong enough to tell it yet." And sometimes, like, it's not a bad story, it's not a bad moment, it's not a bad scene, you have to get stronger to tell that scene, and so it's like you're working out your writing muscle on the other stories that you still have, can unlock it and come back. That's pretty cool. I've heard that, more than once. It's what was the advice? Like, if you wanted to edit your own stuff, put it in the freezer for a while, and then go and like, "Oh, now I can read it with fresh eyes," because something in your mind's gonna lock it, right?
Yeah,
Do you
that
edit? How do you edit, by the way? I'm curious.
uh, so I do the forbidden act of like editing while drafting pretty often. I'll just go
John
back
Vernon
over
did the
what
same
I've
thing.
written and tweak it. But generally, by the time I get to the end, it's not too much of my own personal editing left to do. It's just
Right.
a matter of getting it to a proofreader or a copy editor.
Yeah. I think that that's pretty important. Now, yes, there's a couple schools of thought of editing, like, you should always never do revise it completely, don't, like, take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. There's a historical writer named John Vernon out of Binghamton University, and that was his style of editing. He would write, like, say, 4 or 5 pages that hour, and then the next time he wrote, he'll skip back 2 pages, then edit and go, and then add on a couple more and skip back. I mean, it works. Whatever you need to do, it works. But I'm glad you brought up getting a proofreader or a copy edit from someone else. Have you ever tried doing your own stuff and, like, missed, like, 1,000 things?
I
I
did
have.
do so. Yeah, I published all of the stories in this collection before I compiled them into one, and
Right.
I did it pretty much entirely the wrong way in every single step of the process. Like using generic covers, not getting an editor, doing no promotion before I just threw it onto the
Oh,
web. Um,
oh.
and
But
so,
that's it.
yeah.
That's how we
And so
learn.
when I did get the roots grow into the earth,
Yeah.
proof edited, I had about 250 suggestions, and 242 of them were commas that I missed. Pretty much.
I laugh because I've seen commas and comma splicing as any writer, especially if your first language is English, because we're taught commas or pauses in dialogue. They're not. They actually have a grammatical function. But, we're taught this, like, K-12, we're taught that, like, this is what the comma is used for. So, we either omit them entirely or put them in, like, rain, when in reality, it's that very specific usage, and, it's just I think that's just United States education, not to bash the US, it's just what we grew up with. I'm pretty sure you were taught it's a half a pause, a period's a full pause. It's like, I think half breath, that's what it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
If I
see
if I
that a
was
lot.
ever taught that, I completely forgot it
Oh,
and
yeah? Oh, man.
those rules. But
Oh, man. But that's the thing, these are things that we would not see ourselves. And no matter how well you think, I'm gonna read it backwards. What was that? It was all like, read it backwards. And so it doesn't make sense to your mind. Well, grammar backwards is still kind of be skipping over. So I'm glad you got this published. And you mentioned something else, not having the generic book cover, right?
yeah.
I've yes. So you now have an artist doing your book cover, and you're having like not look at the book cover now. It looks like a photo, probably, right?
Yeah, so
Was it
so this
first?
book cover, I used Canva Pro to make my
Nice.
book cover this time around, and yeah, I heavily tweaked and edited a stock photo that they use just to make it my own.
But I
Um,
like it. It's very dark. It fits. It fits. I'm looking at it right now. And the book from looking at right now, of course, is The Roots Grow into the Earth, a collection of short horror stories out October 7th. You're beating me to the publication. Oh, punks. Oh, you whippersnappers. And you can do it as a pre-order, ebook, and paperback. Matter of fact, if you're listening to the podcast right now, if you're listening to it right now, it'd be really weird. It's just you and I, so it's one of us that listen to it. But when this podcast comes out, the first 4 listeners email me at jimphoenix@hauntedmtl.com. I'll buy it for you. Right there. That we get to 4 copies, boom, onto your Kindle, bam, into your mind. Get it instantly, instant gratification. We always want that. Now, when you are getting these out as a collection and it's your collection, I am going to ask more of the publication aspect of, okay? When we're going through these, I know you put them out on, like, what was it? I'm looking at Amazon right now, so obviously Amazon and maybe Ingram, and maybe it's gonna be, not Book Blur, but oh, man, I'm blanking out. Not
So
Book Funnels for ARCs.
yeah,
Uh,
I do.
not
I do have a book funnel ARC program for this going on now,
Do you?
and I do. So I have it on Book Funnel, Book Sirens, and I have yeah. Just I'm consistently sending out ARC copies all the way until the release date.
That's amazing. Okay, for those who don't know, and thanks for, like, bringing this up as my mind kind of, like, spins out on, like, draft to digital. That was the one I was trying to think of. My mind was gone. I'm so sorry. I don't know how I got book funnel from draft to digital. But I'm glad you talked about book funnel for a bit, because that was one of the things when I have a new book. I'm not gonna push my book out, but we as a publishing company, we never use book funnel. We never use book funnel. And sometimes it was like putting the anthologies. So, like, you guys do the work. I'll put some tweets out, I'll pay some Amazon ads, Facebook ads, whatever, and hopefully lightning strikes if it does. But book funnel is new to me. And they are mostly like they deliver the ARCs, the advanced reader copy for people that don't know, to different readers. Do you get a lot of feedback from them, or what are you getting from book funnel?
Sorry, you broke up there. Could you repeat that?
Sure. Like for book funnel, because they're sending mostly ARCs out for book funnel. So I was wondering, do you get a lot of feedback from these ARCs? Or are you hooking them into maybe a reader's list? What is your goal? What was your main purpose for book funnel?
For me, for book funnel, and just for all the arcs in general, really, my main purpose is just to like get my book into as many hands as I possibly can before the
Okay.
release, and just like hopefully get a nice chunk of reviews that people can see day one. Really,
Okay. So you're also preloading your reviews with this. That's a good idea.
yeah. So yeah, I've been yeah I got on book funnel pretty like recently. Also, it's the newest thing for me. Before that, I was just doing it manually, like asking people if they wanted to
Yes.
be ARC readers. And it's like the first of those reviews have started coming out on Goodreads. But yeah, hopefully, like the book funnel ones will start coming out soon too.
And that's a great point, because a lot of times, like I said, especially when Haunted MTL first started out as Rookie's Backyard, our reviewers were like, you send them PDFs, like the free ebook type thing, even if it wasn't a Kindle or a Mobi or what it was, and like, here you go, and hope they give you a review. They might not. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I just didn't send the right PDF person, but and now you have a system, because the way book selling works, you want to front load. You want to get the momentum going into it, and then you have this big launch and go jazz hands. Where the way it used to work before, this is all author signings. You go to an event or a different event back in the 90s. And author signings, especially after COVID, were kind of like, even before COVID, like someone asked me for advice for author signing before. I'm like, bring your friends so it doesn't look like you're alone. I was like, your mileage may vary on author signings, especially if they have no word or press before that. So I'm glad to seeing that you're using book funnel. That's very cool. And absolutely getting some professional to do, especially it's just proofread, copy edit and proofread. They're two different things, but they kind of go hand in hand. You do one and the other. Now, if you were to give young Bert S. Lechner advice before your very first short story, what advice would that be?
Oh, that is really tough.
Yeah.
I think I don't think young Bert would have listened to any advice I would give him, knowing me. But I think my advice would just be, persevere, right?
Mm.
Everything's gonna come out well, just right, really.
I like that. I think it's honest, and I think it's what people need to hear because a lot of times you hear something like, "I'm gonna make $1 bazillion my first book." I'm like, "No, you won't. You won't." So you might get rejected 5,000 times by an editor, but the 5,001th time that's gonna get you through is that maybe you weren't strong enough to write that one short story, but it's this short story that's gonna hit. It's you keep working at it. It's just you keep writing. It's something that has to keep pushing you, and I like that, persevere. Now, if you were gonna give new writers that haven't even started writing at all, that might be too shy to write or too shy to do the marketing or too shy to do something. What advice would you give to a brand new writer who not not just to persevere, which is great, but something that's going to be what did you wish you knew before you started? I think we mentioned a little bit with the covers and stuff like that.
Yeah. Um, I think you could fill a book with things that you probably should know before you publish a book. Um,
That's
but
true. That is true.
I think something that like stalled me into like getting to where I am now, that put me back really far, is being discouraged by people who tell you how hard it is to write or how hard it is to successfully be an author.
Right.
Like people really like to tell you how low your odds of success are and how
You're
much
not going to win.
work goes into being an author. And I had that experience with somebody who just flat out was telling me to just keep it as a hobby, don't pursue being an author. It's so much work. Um, so I would just say like the biggest advice for just new authors is like it is a lot of work.
Yes.
So just do it in baby steps. Just like do your passion, do your writing,
Yep.
start one social media platform, get used to it, then start the other ones. Just do everything little bit by bit until it's in just whatever sort of pieces you need to do it in.
I enjoy that. I like the baby steps approach because I think, and this is something we all as authors can reflect on as another like social media platform pops up like whack a mole. Like, oh, I have to go this one now. Well, you might be really good at one, but you won't know until you try them. And that like you find your lane and like, oh, I'm really good at this one. I can do okay on this one. So you know which way to kind of like go towards. And I like that. And I like it's the baby step approach. And that's what I was trying to say is like it's not gonna be like you're gonna write one book and be done and walk away from it. It's gonna be like, okay, that was your oh my gosh, everyone went wrong on the fire book. Now you learn from that, and now you make another one. And you learn from that one, you make another one, you learn from that one, you make a learn. It's a progressive, and it's like a lot of stuff. Like even like today, I've been doing this for like decades, and I'm like, oh man, book funnel, huh? Like, oh man, fine. I guess it's no longer a street team of a bunch of punks in the parking lot. So I appreciate the time, and again, Bert S. Lechner. We are going to do cosmic horror. It's The Roots Grow into the Earth, a collection of short horror stories. Pre-order it October 7th. Pre-order it now. Don't wait for October 7th. Do it right now. Do it before it gets to September. And remember, did I say the first three? I meant the first four listeners Who call it? Call in. Wow. It's been a long day. If you call in, I'll be very surprised. I'll be very surprised. My mom's getting one, I guess. Who write in the Jim Phoenix at HauntedMTL.com or Instagram, tweet, or I guess X now, or thread us, like TikTok. I don't know where I am anymore. We will buy you the book and we'll ship it out. Or well, actually, Amazon will ship it out. Well, I'm not going to ship it out to you, or Barnes and Nobles, whoever your bookseller is, they'll ship it out to you. All right. So once again, Bert S. Lechner, thank you very much for your time. And that's wonderful. Cosmic horror. We need more of that. We need more cosmic horror. I'm so glad you're here. So
Yeah, well,
thank
thank
you.
you very much for having me. Yeah.
Bye.